Over the past lectures, we have seen how graph neural networks propagate information through neighborhoods, how different architectures implement aggregation, and how depth influences performance. But an important question remains: what can these models actually represent and what can they not? Not all graph structures are distinguishable by message passing, not all long-range dependencies can be captured effectively, and increasing depth doesn't necessarily increase power. In this lecture, we step back from implementation and ask more fundamental questions. How expressive are message passing graph neural networks? Why do they fail on certain graph structures? What causes oversmoothing and oversquashing? And what practical techniques help mitigate these limitations? Understanding these boundaries is essential because it allows us to use graph neural networks effectively, recognize when they are appropriate, and understand when a different modeling approach may be required. So I want to start with these two observations. On one hand, I want to mention message passing and the fact that message passing is fundamentally multi-set aggregation. And you might remember that the updating of the embedding in each layer has this sort of form, and this is where the neighborhood occurs. And the expressivity of this updating depends on the aggregation function, the update function, and the number of layers. And this is really about multisets because several identical neighbors contribute cumulatively their features. For example, if two nodes have identical own features and identical neighborhood feature multisets, graph neural networks cannot distinguish them no matter the depth you might choose for your model. The other point I want to make here is that there is an upper bound in how much graph neural networks can do, and that's given by the one-dimensional Weisweiler-Lemon test, or 1WL test. There is this key result that says standard message passing GNNs are at most as powerful as the one-dimensional WL graph isomorphism test. And so the consequence is that if 1WL cannot distinguish two graphs, then standard graph neural networks cannot do that either. And I want to give you an example, and I continue it in a visual way on the next slide. 1WL and so GNNs cannot distinguish if you have the same degree sequence but different global structure. So what I mean by that is if you have, for example, these two graphs which are non-isomorphic, but they consist of exactly the same kind of nodes, so 5 nodes that I'm labeling here with B and 1 node that I label with A. And moreover, these 6 nodes, they have the exact same degree in the two graphs. And for example, each B node from graph 1 has exactly the same neighbor labels as each B node from the second graph. So the result is that if you start with these nodes arranged in different ways, the initial features are going to be exactly the same, the neighborhoods are going to be exactly the same. So in other words, these two GNNs are going to give you indistinguishable embeddings. And so GNNs will not be able to clarify that they are in fact non-isomorphic. Then I want to mention oversmoothing and oversquashing. And oversmoothing highlights a core limitation of message passing graph neural networks. As layer stack, repeated neighborhood averaging makes node representations increasingly similar and eventually is going to erase distinctions needed for prediction. This diffusion-driven collapse explains why deeper GNNs often degrade in performance and motivates architectural modification to preserve discriminative information. So the empirical rule of thumb is that in GNNs, 2 layers are often optimal and 5 or more layers often degrade performance. In our social network example, in a dense community, after many layers, everyone's embedding becomes similar and users become indistinguishable. So, I mean, as a concrete explanation here is that if everyone averages everyone repeatedly, then individuality eventually disappears. So after several layers, a node may depend on exponentially many other nodes, but remember that its embedding dimension remains fixed, and if many of those signals, or many of those exponentially many signals, must pass through only a few intermediate nodes, the model is forced to compress large amounts of information into small vectors, and this structural compression is called oversquashing. Again, taking our social network example, imagine that two large communities connect by one so-called bridge user. So all information that goes from one community to the other one goes through that particular user. And that bridge now, that user has fixed embedding dimension, and so there will be too much information that has to be compressed from one community to the other one. Remember also this discussion we've had on homophily and heterophily. The homophily assumption that we have, for example, in GCNs, and to a large extent also in graph SAGE, is that connecting nodes are similar. If you have heterophily, meaning that you fundamentally assume that you have very different architectures and very different neighbors, then heterophily is going to require something else. For example, attention. Neighbors are going to tend to have different labels, and averaging is going to become destructive and performance degrades. In graph neural network, if you want to think about practical design principles, the rule of thumb is that you should compare it to a baseline. For example, compare it to a multi-layer processor. And if the GNN doesn't perform on an MLP, the graph is not helping. So the other one is keep the depth small. Start with just 2 layers and apply ReLU and apply dropout, and only add complexity if you really need. But also check degree distribution. If you have, for example, a heavy-tailed graph in terms of the degree distribution, you might need sampling and normalization. Also, another point is that you should, like we discussed for other models, you should evaluate across seeds, because GNNs are typically small and they have high variance. So it's particularly important to have several experimentation across several random seeds, and you should only report mean, standard deviation, and confidence intervals. So to the point, when to use graph neural networks? Well, you should use them when structure is meaningful, when relational dependencies are central, and when the graph topology has a critical influence on the prediction. You should avoid GNNs on the other hand when the graph is noisy or arbitrary. The features are more important than the structure for what you want to predict, and connectivity to a large extent is uninformative. There are some strengths to graph neural networks. They are elegant, they are permutation invariant, and they are effective especially in homophily graphs. There are also limitations. One we mentioned earlier, they are bounded by the 1WL expressivity. You are bound to limited depth. They are sensitive to graph geometry, and to a large extent they struggle with heterophily.